I think, yeah. Even my students are not coming.
I'll mute myself then. There's too much sound coming.
But you have to do the introduction.
I'll do the introduction.
Yeah.
Okay, 1 second. I'll close the window.
It's not very loud, the sound. I mean,
Yeah, it has.
it's not really bothering.
It's,
Okay.
Atul is there.
So let's join.
Hi, Gaurav. Hi, Amri.
Hi.
I,
Hi, Atul. Hi, Arvind.
Actually, I told Arvind to come, but then I realized I'd given most of this talk in ISC already once. You can leave.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's like there's just a little bit of new stuff, but it's.
Hi, Krishnan.
Hi. How are you?
Fine. How are things?
Getting okay.
Is the situation in JNU getting better in terms of cases and so on?
I think so. I am sitting in JNU right now.
Okay, that's good.
People have started coming actually.
Delhi is probably safer than Bangalore right now.
Yeah. But Bangalore is starting to dip. So
We dipped and then it's gone up a bit again.
in Chennai?
Yeah, I mean, it had gone below 1,000 cases a day for a while, and then.
But Delhi is picking up again, apparently.
Yeah, so
apparently 30% are already infected.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's already. I mean, everybody is infected. Anyway, you want to begin?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, we could start. Right.
Krishnan?
Okay, so it's a pleasure to welcome Amritanshu Prasad from IMSC Chennai, and he'll speak about character polynomials and their moments. So hand it over to him. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank the organizers of this seminar for inviting me to speak here. So I'm going to talk about how certain polynomials can be used to write down characters of representations of the symmetric group. And I was told that I should keep it fairly elementary because there'd be students here. So with that, I don't know how many students are actually here, but let's try to start at the very beginning. So I'll use Sn to denote the nth symmetric group, which is just a group of permutations of n letters. And so a permutation can be, written. So there are many ways of writing a permutation. One is the one-line notation. So 2, 5, 4, 3, 1 represents the permutation, which takes 1 to 2, 2 to 5, 2 to 5, 3 to 4, 4 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 3, and 5 goes to 1. But there's another nicer way of visualizing this. I'll write the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'll sort of put a directed graph structure on this. So 1 goes to 2, so I'll draw an arrow from 1 to 2. 2 goes to 5, so I'll draw an arrow from 2 to 5. 3 goes to 4, so I'll draw an arrow from 3 to 4. 4 goes to 3, I'll draw an arrow from 4 to 3. And then 5 goes to 1, so I'll draw an arrow like this. So what you're seeing here is the cycle structure. These are cycles of the permutation. So this cycle is You can write it as 1, 5, 2. It's a 3 cycle, and this is a 2 cycle, 3, 4. So there are 2 elements which go, circularly, and here there are 3 elements. You can also have 1 cycles where you just have 1 element which is mapped to itself. So that's a fixed point of the permutation. So the cycle type of this permutation is just the lengths of the cycles written in weakly decreasing order. So the cycle type of this permutation here is 3, 2 because it has 1, 3 cycle and 1, 2 cycle. And the conjugacy classes in Sn these are just in bijection with, these are the elements with the same cycle type. So all the elements with 1, 3 cycle and 1, 2 cycle will be conjugate to this element W that I've shown you here. And therefore, a class function of Sn is a function of the cycle type. So a class function is a function that's invariant under conjugation, is just a function of cycle type. And the reason we're interested in class functions is that they arise as characters of representations. But I'll come back to that a little later. But now let me describe to you a way of constructing class functions of Sn for every integer n. So we'll consider the ring P of polynomials with rational coefficients in infinitely many variables. So I have infinitely many variables, x1, x2, and so on. And I can regard this variable as a function on the ith variable. I'll regard it as a function on Sn. It's a function from Sn to, well, integers. It just takes a permutation W to the number of I cycles in W. So for this permutation that I've drawn here, x1 is 0, x2 is 1, x3 is 1, x4 is 0, and all the higher x's are 0, right? But the beauty of this is that this is a function of Sn for all n greater than or equal to 0. S0 is the group of automorphisms of the empty set. It has one element. Yeah. Okay, enough of that. So yeah. So since each of these variables itself can be thought of as a function on the symmetric group, and this is obviously a class function because it only depends on the cycle type of the permutation. Any polynomial also gives rise to a class function on Sn. So if you have any function f in P.
Can I ask for clarification?
Please.
There is a flight going, so I have to wait. So you said cycle type like 3, 2 or something. Those, so you'll write with a comma and those are cycle type? So what? I don't understand.
Yeah, so in this example, you can see that there is 1, 3 cycle and 1, 2 cycle. So I'll just write the sizes of those cycles in decreasing order.
Achha. But there could be more than, like it could be 3, 1, 1.
So in S5, there are several cycle types. There's 5, which means you have just 1 5 cycle. Then you have 4, 1, which means you have 1 4 cycle and 1 cycle.
Okay, so all those, but
these are all the partitions of 5.
But are they conjugate or something like?
So these are all the different conjugacy classes.
Oh, okay.
So what we are seeing here is that, and then 5 ones. So this, these are, so there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 conjugacy classes in S5. So the one conjugacy class consists of all 5 cycles. So there'll be things which look like this. Something goes to something, goes to something, goes to, and whatever numbers you put in here, all those elements will be in the same conjugacy class. This last class here is the identity element.
Okay.
1 goes to itself, 2 goes to itself, everything goes to itself.
So you have function that's what you're saying is from one of these types to
So now it's a function which depends only on the cycle decomposition of W. And xi is the function. I'll give you an example in a moment. So xi is the function. So x1 is the number of fixed points of a permutation. x2 is the number of 2 cycles in the permutation. And to say define this function, I don't need to say which n I'm talking about. It is for any, it could be in S5, it could be in S6. I just take the permutation and count the number of I cycles. Is that...
yeah, it does answer my question once you give some example. We are all students, by the way. So.
Oh, okay, good. So I was fearing that there would be no students.
Yeah, we are all students.
So yeah. So now if you're yeah, maybe I should I'll give the example in a moment. So let me just finish what I was saying. So if you have a polynomial, you can regard this as a function on Sn, which takes W to this polynomial evaluated at x1W, the number of 1 cycles in W, x2W, and so on. So you just substitute for the variables x1, x2, x3, and so on, the number of I cycles, the number of 1 cycles, 2 cycles, 3 cycles, and so on in your permutation W. So this is a class function of Sn for every n greater than.
I still don't understand, sorry about this. But you said this xi is from Sn for any n.
Yes.
Because those cycles could be part of any n, that's why, is it? Sn.
So W is a permutation. W belongs to Sn for some n.
Yeah.
So I have given a polynomial f, and I've given you and you give me a permutation W in Sn for some n. So what I do is I draw this directed graph corresponding to that permutation, and I find out its cycle types, its cycle type. Okay, so for S5, there are so many possibilities. So let me give you an example of here. If I take this, then this is an example of such an element is it has to have two cycles and one cycle. So that means it may have something like this. This is a 2 cycle. Let's draw another 2 cycle. And here is a 1 cycle. So this is an element with two cycles and one cycle. For this element, x1 of W is 1, x2 of W is 2. And now if I have the polynomial x1 squared, x2 squared, then its value will be at this, for this permutation will be 1 into 2 squared. Right, so it will be 4.
Okay.
So in this way, every polynomial gives you a class function on every symmetric group Sn.
Okay, thank you.
So we have a language to talk about functions on all symmetric groups. Otherwise, normally we would have to specify on each symmetric group a class function, and it would not be possible to talk about all symmetric groups at one stroke. But do we get interesting functions? It turns out that you get quite a lot of nice class functions which come from representation theory. So how do class functions arise in representation theory? Given a representation rho, so what is a representation? Oops, I don't want red here. So a representation rho is just a homomorphism from Sn to some general linear rho. We can talk about its character. Chi subscript rho, and at a permutation W, its value is trace of rho W. This is a linear map from Cn to Cn because rho W lies in GLN. And this is a class function because conjugate matrices have the same trace. So this chi rho is a class function. And so let's look at an example. The easiest representation of Sn that one can think of is Sn goes to GLNC. So Sn acts on Cn by permuting the coordinates of a vector in an n vector. And so you have this representation. Then what is the trace of rho? So trace of rho W on Cn. So this W, the way it acts is this W, if it's a permutation, it will act by a permutation matrix, something like this. A matrix with zeros and ones, and exactly 1, 1 in each row and 1, 1 in each column. And the trace of such a matrix will be the number of ones along the diagonal. And that's just the number of fixed points of the permutation. And so that is x1 of W. X1 is the number of one cycles in the permutation, which is just the number of fixed points. So this is an example of a representation where the character, it's a representation of Sn. It's not one representation. See, it's actually for each n, I have defined a representation of Sn in some uniform way. Another example that you can look at is, let's take a row n. Maybe I'll call it row n because they're all different. Sn to GL of Cn, but now instead of just taking one copy of Cn, I'll tensor it with itself d times. Then its character will be just this thing raised to the power d. So the polynomial that represents this character is just x1 to the power d. So these are some examples of representations which have polynomial character. So we will be in, so one of the things is we'll see that there are lots of nice such families of representations. Now, one of the calculations that keeps coming up in representation theory is the following. So given two class functions, so there's an inner product which goes back to Schur, given two class functions on Sn, their Schur inner product it's defined as, so let's call these class functions chi and eta. The inner product of chi and eta, and this is with reference to Sn, is defined to be just the average value of their product. So normally one would put a bar over here and define it as the usual sesquilinear Hilbert, the inner product. But for Sn, we don't need to do that because most of the interesting functions that come up in representation theory are all real valued. So we will not put the bar here. We will just keep it like this. So this defines an inner product. We just don't think of it as a complex vector space. Think of it as a Q vector space if you wish. Oh, well, we were looking at representation of the complex numbers. So, but anyway, let's not worry about that. We'll just define this bilinear form. And this defines, I'll call it an inner product, though we can do it over real numbers if you like. So this is an inner product. Or, put the bar, it shouldn't matter, but I don't want to put the bar because I'll be looking only at functions which are real valued on, maybe we can say, real valued class functions. And the reason this is important is that the characters of irreducible representations form an orthonormal basis with respect to this inner product. And those are called Schur's orthogonality relations. So what we need to do often in representation theories, we need to compute these inner products. And if I'm going to work with functions that are given by polynomials, like here, then I want to compute the inner products of such polynomials. So in other words, what I want to compute is I have a so for f in P, so this is just a polynomial in those infinitely many variables. I want to compute, for each n, I want to compute 1 over n factorial summation w belongs to Sn f of x1w, x2w, and so on. So this, you can regard this as a linear functional on P. I will call this the value of this. I'll just write it like this. So this I call the moment of F. And there's another one that I would like to talk about, which is also very interesting, and that is 1 over n factorial summation w belongs to Sn. And now I don't want to just take the, so what is this? This is just the average value over Sn of the class function that is associated to the polynomial f. And now I'll just throw in a sign w. So I mean, this sign is the same as the sign that comes up when you compute determinants, the sign of a permutation. The number of pairs of variables you need to swap to go from w to the identity permutation, and the same thing. So this is yet another linear functional. So this I call the signed moment of f. So these terms are just something I cooked up. Surprisingly, these things I couldn't find in the literature, but this is something that you would like to know. So, for example, if you have a representation given by a family of representations given by a polynomial, if you could compute the nth moment of that polynomial, you would know the multiplicity of the trivial representation of Sn in the representation whose character is given by that polynomial. And this one would give the multiplicity of the sign character in that representation. I'll come back to that. So let's say it like this. If rho n Sn to GL something, it depends now on n, is a representation, is a family of representations such that trace of rho n w c to the n, whatever this n depends on n, is equal to, is given by some polynomial x1w, x2w, then this thing is the multiplicity of the trivial representation in the representation rho n. And this is the multiplicity of the sign representation. And you could also, if you have two different representations, you could compute the dimension of the, in general, if you have F and G, both coming from characters of representations, representing families rho n and sigma n, then the moment of F times G, this is going to be the dimension of the homomorphism, Sn homomorphism space of rho n sigma. So these things have representation theoretic meaning, and in fact, we expect them to be therefore non-negative integers. Okay, any questions so far? So the thing with giving on,
So your representation is from a finite group, right? So
it's an infinite, I have an infinite family of representations, but each one is of a finite group and it's a finite dimensional representation.
yeah, okay, but I mean then, so then your these NN has to be large if you increase N, right?
Yeah, it means, or it could even just, like if I take the trivial representation, it would be the same.
When it's a prime, you will be in trouble. But
Or no, why should I be?
then you need a much bigger NN, otherwise it will be trivial, right? So because
Okay, so the smallest dimension representation of Sn is n minus 1 dimensional, I believe.
okay. So,
I had asked a question in chat.
Oh, let me see. I didn't see it. Where is the chat? Oh, there's a lot of things in the chat.
Okay, I can read it out to you. Is there a good result / relation for the polynomial to be expressed as a product of separated sets of variables? That's the
So
question.
I don't know. So as a product of separated sets of variables.
You see, they are symmetric within cycles. So I sort of think of product of polynomials in those separated sets.
Yeah, but products here will come from tensor products of representation.
Yes. Actually, that is what I have in mind, because genuine entanglement is what I have in mind. So tensor has to come, of course.
Yes.
I mean, if there is a good relation, you please tell me, because I need it.
No, in fact, for Sn, the tensor product problem is not very well understood, whereas for GLN it is. So I'll come to that. It's called the Kronecker problem, and it's
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Difficult
Thank
open problem, and one of the implications of what I'm going to say is to try to not understand the factorization, but to just try to understand the product per se.
Yeah, I have a paper on polynomial representation of quantum entanglement in contemporary maths, AMS 687. So that is where the whole thing will be related with polynomial.
Okay.
It is 2017. Okay.
Okay, I'll take up.
Okay. Thank you.
so can you repeat what you said about smallest dimension of the
The
representation?
smallest dimension of, okay, so there's the trivial representation and the sign representation. Those are one dimensional.
Okay.
But besides that, the smallest dimension of a representation of Sn is, of an irreducible representation of Sn is n minus 1. The representation is easy to construct. You take Sn acts on Cn by permuting the axes. But that action leaves a one-dimensional subspace, namely the subspace spanned by the all one vectors invariant. So you could take the orthogonal complement of that one-dimensional space, or you could just take the quotient by that one-dimensional space. And that gives a representation of dimension n minus 1. And that is the next smallest dimensional representation of Sn.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, I'm not sure why I know that fact, but I'm very sure it's true. Okay, so where was I? Yeah, so now yeah, I guess any more questions at this stage? Okay, so we have these two linear functionals, and what I want to describe now is a simple algorithm to compute these linear functionals very explicitly. And it's based on knowing the values of these linear functionals on certain bases of these polynomial, on the space of polynomials. So so let me uh, define some notation firstly. So so now I'm talking about partitions, integer partitions. So an integer partition alpha is is a tuple of it's a sort of alpha L, where alpha 1 is greater than or equal to alpha 2 is greater than or equal to alpha N. And the sum of these things is called the size of the partition. I will denote it by absolute value of alpha. And but then what? So these conjugacy classes in Sn are precisely integer partitions. These are all integer partitions of size 5. And there's another way of writing the integer partition. It's called the exponential notation. And I will write alpha equals 1 raised to a1, 2 raised to a2, and so on, where ai is the number of parts that are equal to I. So this is just actually the same as our what is represented by our variables x1, x2. When you take the integer partition, that is the cycle decomposition of a permutation. So this is the exponential notation, and this notation, the size of alpha is a1 plus 2a2 plus 3a3 plus so on. So this thing gets complicated, but on the other hand, it's very easy to write down all integer partitions when you don't have to worry about the size. You just independently pick a1, a2, a3, and so on, greater than or equal to 0. And every time you pick a bunch of non-negative integers, you get well, finitely many of them. The remaining have to be 0. You get a permutation of some size, and that's something we will use a lot. So this is the exponential notation. So for example, the partition 3, 2, 2 will be represented by 1 to the, so how many 1 times does 1 occur here? It doesn't occur at all. So 1 to the 0, 2 occurs 2 times, 3 occurs once, and then nothing else occurs. So I'll just stop. But I could write 4 to the 0, 5 to the 0, but we don't do that. We just stop once. Okay. So this is the exponential notation of this partition. And this is very convenient for some things. So for example, if you take W to be a permutation with cycle type alpha, then the number of Z alpha, which is defined to be the number of W prime in Sn, such that, say W in Sn, such that W commutes with W prime. This is given in terms of these A1, A2, and A3 very nicely. It is just product over I raised to AI factorial. So for this kind of calculation, the exponential notation is much more useful than writing down the parts of the partition. And we will see this again and again, that the exponential notation is very useful for many calculations. So now let me come to the Oops, what happened here? Okay, let me come to the main theorem of this uh, talk. So and well, the main formula I should say, and it says that oh, one more piece of notation I need to define. So given a partition alpha, X choose alpha, this is going to be used to denote the product I goes from 1 to infinity. Well, it will be a finite product. X1 choose A1. Now these are the multiplicities, the number of one cycles. Just Xi choose AI. So it's X1 choose A1 times X choose to A2 and so on. Xi choose AI. So this is just a definition. So this is an element of P. It's a polynomial in the variables x1, x2. So for example, if I take alpha to be the partition which I had here, 3, 2, 2, then its exponential notation is 1 to the 0, 2 to the 2, 3 to the 1. So X choose alpha is X1 choose 0, which is just 1. Then X2 choose 2. X3 choose 1, which I can write as X2 into X2 minus 1. This is the definition of X2 choose 2, okay, by 2 factorial, X3 by 1 factorial. So these are polynomials, and these polynomials form a basis of P. Whereas alpha runs over all integer partitions. So if I can tell you how to evaluate these linear functionals on these polynomials, then I can an algorithm for evaluating these linear functionals would be to take any polynomial, express it in terms of such a this basis, and then evaluate the linear functional on these things. So now the main formula of this talk is that so if I take this polynomial and try to compute its average over Sn, then it has a very simple form. It is 0 if n is less than the size of the partition alpha, and it is 1 over z alpha. This is the same z alpha that we encountered before. The number of permutations that compute with a given permutation W with cycle type alpha. If n is greater than or equal to the size of alpha. So it's 0 up to a point, and then it goes up to 1 over z alpha. And the signed version, that means now we're not just averaging that class function, we are taking the signs and averaging it, is turns out to be the sign of a permutation with cycle type alpha. So it turns out that the sign of a permutation also only depends on its cycle type. And in fact, the sign of W alpha, maybe I can add that formula here. Sign of, so W alpha just represents a permutation with cycle type alpha. It is product over I minus 1 to the power AI. So it can be again written down in terms of the exponential notation for alpha. So the sign of this, for example, is sorry, no, not the sign has to be a sign. -1 to the power I minus 1. Yeah. So for this permutation, I have a -1 to the power 2 minus 1 to the power times 2. So I get +1 and then this +1. So this thing has so sine of W322 is -1 to the power. If I take 2, then I get 1 times 2 into -1 to the power 2 times 1, which is equal to 1. So this such a permutation in this class would have sine +1. Sine W alpha divided by Z alpha if alpha belongs to the set n or n plus 1 and 0 otherwise. So we were very surprised to see these formulae. They are really very simple. So here what we see is that this only for 2 values of n, this thing is non-zero. Whereas here it is 0 for some point and then it stabilizes to another value. And let me show you the proof of this theorem. It's really not very difficult. Maybe I'll prove the first one since it's slightly simpler, but the second one is also very similar. You just have to keep track of the signs. So let's do this. So I want to compute the moment of x choose alpha, but the nth moment. So what is that? That is 1 over n factorial summation w in Sn product. Now I'll use the definition of this xiw ai. And so now I will, instead of summing over all elements of Sn, I'll sum over the conjugacy classes in Sn. So I'll get 1 over this thing, and then I will now sum over all the conjugacy classes in Sn. So the conjugacy classes in Sn are determined by partitions of n, this possible cycle types. So I'll say beta is a partition of n. So if beta is a partition of n, I can write this as 1 raised to b1, 2 raised to b2, and so on in exponential notation. So okay, and then I will take the value at beta. So this is product over I, bi choose ai. But now I need to also multiply this by the number of elements with that cycle type. So the number of elements in a given conjugacy class is the order of the group divided by the centralizer of of an element in that conjugacy class. So this will be Z beta. So this is the sum I want to evaluate. And so now let me not write this as let me use the exponential notation here. So what I'm saying is that, okay, this n factorial and this n factorial will cancel. And then I'm saying that I'm taking summation b1 plus 2b2 plus ... is equal to n. These are all non-negative. And then I'm taking 1 over I to the bi factorial. That's this term here. And then let's write this binomial coefficient. This is bi factorial by ai factorial times bi minus ai factorial. And you see immediately that there is a whole lot of cancellation. And then what I will do is I have an ai factorial. I'll pull out from this 1 over let's product ai factorial I to the power ai And then here in here we have and now we can assume that bi is greater than or equal to ai, otherwise this term is anyway 0. So we have bi greater than or equal to ai, and what's left in here is this has come out, so all I'm left with is 1 over I raised to bi minus ai, bi minus ai factorial. Okay. And this whole thing is product I, all positive integers I. And so this becomes 1 over z alpha. And what is this? Well, this is really just 1 over, uh, so um, so this is, this is, I can write it as, let's write it like this, n minus size of alpha factorial sum over w in s n minus size of alpha of 1. This is just this thing, because I can write this as n minus size of alpha factorial divided by the centralizer of an element in S, in this smaller symmetric group. And if I pull this out here, so this thing, just as I went here from a sum over Sn to a sum over partitions, I can do the same thing in reverse order and get this. And so this sum, I'm just taking the function which is constant 1 and averaging it over Sn. So this will just be equal to 1. So there's nothing here. This whole thing is just 1, not this thing. This whole thing is 1. So that's 1 over z alpha, provided that this thing is non-negative. Otherwise it will be 0. There'll be no terms at all over here. So that proves the first result. So let me explain how to prove the second result. So there what will happen is, I already gave you a formula for the sign. It's minus 1 raised to I minus y, I ai. So you will have that kind of thing here. So if I were to change this to the sign moment, then I would get minus 1 raised to I minus 1. And I would pull out, so here also I'd have minus 1 I minus 1 ai. I mean, this would be sine of w up here, sorry. And that, when I sum over, sorry, this is, sorry, I am mixing things up. Let's do this carefully. So I would have here sine of w, but then I'm summing over conjugacy classes. So it's minus 1 raised to I minus 1 bi. And so here I would have minus 1 raised to I minus 1 bi. And then I would pull out here a minus 1 raised to I minus 1 ai. And here I would have a minus 1 raised to I minus 1 bi minus ai. And this would be a sum not of the function 1, but rather this would be a function, how do I do this? Yeah, I don't want to strike this out now because it will be something else. So this would be sine of w. So this would be the average value of the sine character on a symmetric group. And the average value of the sine character of any character on a group, which is non-trivial, is usually 0 unless the group is the trivial group. So this is, and here we have, of course, this minus 1 raised to, so sine of w alpha. This thing becomes sine of w alpha. And so this is going to be 1 only if n minus alpha is 0 or 1. Otherwise, this is going to be 0 because then Sn is a non-trivial group and the sign character is a non-trivial character of that group. So this is equal to 0 unless n minus size alpha belongs to 0 or 1. And if it belongs to 0 or 1, well, this group is a group with just one element, and so this is 1. So this thing is sine W alpha by Z alpha otherwise. So that proves the second identity. So any questions so far? No questions? Okay. So okay, so let me continue. And so let us see how an algorithm to compute these things work. So okay, so we have a polynomial f. It's given to us. So usually polynomials are given to us in terms of their coefficients. So we'll have alpha, C alpha, x to the power alpha, where x to the power alpha is x1 to the power a1, x2 to the power a2, and so on. So this alpha is just partition, and this is the exponential notation. You can also use this to expand any polynomial. So suppose this is our polynomial, then what I can do is I will use the following formula from combinatorics, which is that I want to express this in terms of, so this is the expansion, so to speak, of the ring of a polynomial in the basis of monomials. And I want to go to the basis of these kind of things, x choose alpha, which I call binomials or binomial basis. Okay, so they're not binomials. Yeah, so they're, it's the binomial basis. A binomial is a sum of two monomials. It's not a binomial in that sense. I want to expand in terms of binomial basis. So there's a well-known formula that if I take x to the power n, then this is sum over k goes from 0 to n um, um, s n k, and then we have k factorial x choose k. So let me explain what all this. This is of course just x into x minus 1, x minus k plus 1 by k factorial. That's what this term is. So when you multiply it by k factorial, it is what is called the falling factorial. So now, and this thing is what is called the Stirling number of the second kind. It counts the number of ways of partitioning a set of size n into exactly k non-empty subsets. And so what you can do is you can write x alpha as product over I. So this is xi choose ai, and so this becomes sorry, no, this is just product xi to the power ai by definition. So this becomes product over I summation bi less than or equal to ai, and then I put s AI bi, the Stirling number, times bi factorial xi choose bi. So this is how you expand a monomial basis element in terms of a binomial basis element. So if you want to compute these moments and sign moments, what you do is you have you start with f is summation c alpha x to the power alpha. Then you define g to be summation over alpha c alpha product of uh, over all I bi less than or equal to ai Stirling number ai bi factorial, and then I will put yi to the bi. This is just a variable for keeping track of which binomial basis element I'm using. So anyway, there are different variables which occur in the different factors. So there's no, there's no problem with multiplying them. They'll perfectly keep track of the thing. So then you compute this, and so G is, so suppose this G is equal to D alpha y raised to alpha. It's very easy to, any computer algebra system will easily, this will be easily implemented. And then you replace y to the power alpha with either 1 over z alpha, provided of course that n is greater than or equal to the size of alpha, to compute f, the moment and thing, or otherwise sine w alpha divided by z alpha. Uh, this delta just means that if this condition is satisfied, it's 1. If this condition is not satisfied, it's 0. So here the condition is n belongs to size of alpha or size of alpha plus 1 for Fn. So you can very easily expand an arbitrary polynomial in terms of this so-called binomial basis and compute these moments and sign moments very easily. Okay, so I guess my time is nearly up, right? So, hello?
Yes, yes. How much time would you want, Amri?
Maybe so the main thing is done now. I just want to talk about the applications, a couple of applications.
Yes, yes. Then go ahead, please.
Yeah.
Those of them who want to leave will just leave.
Yeah. Are there any questions at this stage? So, I mean, basically what I've done is I've said, okay, we have these two very natural linear functionals on polynomials, and they are easy to compute if you expand your polynomial in terms of a slightly different basis than the usual basis that we use for polynomials, this binomial basis. And for that, in that basis, very easy to compute these moments. So that's all I've said till now. So now, for why is this? Why am I excited about this? So here's the thing. There are lots of nice. As I said, this computes the multiplicity of the trivial representation and the signed representation. So let me just give you one example here. So if we take this Cn tensor D, right? This is a representation of Sn, and its character is x1 to the d, right? The number of fixed points to the power d. And x1 to the power d, I want to know how many times does a trivial representation occur in Cn tensor d. Okay, this may not be so difficult to do by other means also, but let me just use it to illustrate this method. And so this is going to be summation j less than or equal to d s bj j factorial x1 choose j, and just the formula I had before. So x1 d n is going to be summation j less than or equal to d and minimum of D and N, in fact, S dj. That's it. Just by evaluating the moment of this, which will be 1 over j factorial. And if n is greater than or equal to d, this is just the Bell number d if n is greater than or equal to d. And if you work out the other one, how many times does the sign representation occur? This answer is something I've not seen before, but again, it may be possible to do it. You will only get 2 of the Stirling numbers. You'll get S dn plus S dn minus 1. So it's a sum of 2 consecutive Stirling numbers of the second kind. Okay, so that's so you can do this for any what is called polynomial representation of GLN. You can compute the multiplicity of the so for every partition lambda, there's a representation called W lambda Cn, which is a representation of GLN C. And inside here you have Sn. And we are given this representation. If lambda has more than n parts, then this will be 0. But if lambda has up to n parts, then this will be a non-trivial, irreducible representation of GLN. And we ask, what is the dimension of Sn invariant vectors? Then that will just, this thing is given by a polynomial. So there exists a polynomial S lambda, which you can very easily compute. I have formulas for it, which gives this. And what you get is that the dimension of this thing, Sn invariant vectors, is going to be the moment of S lambda at n. And the dimension of W lambda Cn, but not Sn invariant, but sign invariant vectors is going to be this other thing. So what you see is that the sign representation will not even occur in W lambda Cn for sufficiently large n, whereas the dimension, the multiplicity of the trivial representation will stabilize after n because of these two formulas. Where did they go? Because of these two formulas, this sign moment becomes 0 after some point. This thing stabilizes 1 over z alpha. This polynomial S lambda has a degree equal to the sum of the partition lambda. And so once you cross that, the multiplicity of the trivial representation will stabilize, whereas the multiplicity of the sign representation will become 0. And I'll end by just mentioning one more application. So there's a famous thing called Moynihan stability theorem for Kronecker coefficients. So the irreducible representations of Sn are indexed by partitions of n. These are the irreducible representations of Sn. And the Kronecker problem is given two irreducible representations. So these are two partitions of n. Try to write this as a sum of irreducible representations. And these coefficients are called Kronecker coefficients. Okay, now there's this notion of padding of a partition, which is the following. So I have a partition lambda, and if I take some number n, so okay, I'm going to go a little fast here because I don't have time, but those who know these things will understand it, and those who don't anyway, it would be hard to explain it in such a short time. So what I do is I add to this long first row. So lambda n is the partition where I add n minus size of lambda, lambda 1, lambda 2. This is the partition. So for this, of course, to make sense, I need that n is greater than or equal to size of lambda plus lambda 1. And Moynihan's famous theorem is that G lambda n mu n nu n is independent of n for large n. And this follows from the first formula here, because it's known that this, if you write down this family of representations V lambda padded partitions, this is given by a polynomial, has character given by polynomial. But here's a, where did it go? Geez, where did my, yeah. So, but here's a result which I haven't seen before, which is kind of funny. It says that if I take G lambda n, but I don't take lambda n, instead I take this partition and I conjugate it. That means I reflect it about this axis. So instead of adding a long row on top, I add a long column on the left. Then, so that is denoted by a prime usually. This is 0 for sufficiently large n. So that's well, it's a funny consequence of this sign moment calculation. And yeah, there are some relations to multipartite and bipartite partition functions and so on, which I haven't had time to go into. Maybe some other time. So I'll stop now. Sorry for going over time.
Thanks a lot, Amri. So are there any questions apart from the one on Bell polynomials?
Oh, there's a one on Bell. Let me see.
No, I think Arvind responded to that and it has been acknowledged. Anyone else? Any other question?
I have a question.
Yes.
I want to ask, so Amritanshu, nice talk. But I just have one question. Why only representations on C? You could do it on R, right? I mean,
in fact, for Sn, we could do it on Q. It makes no difference.
Okay. I see. But in general, you prefer C, is it?
No. Yeah. Okay. So as far as Sn is concerned, it doesn't really matter. Of course, it's interesting to look at representations over any field, including ones with positive characteristics.
Okay. When you write this cycle type, in some sense, it relates to partition, right? That's why you can do.
Yeah, the cycle type is a partition.
Yeah. So. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
So I had this question that you were showing our calculations on your calculations on finding the trivial representation in of the, I'm sorry, I forgot the word you used, the regular representation of Sn. Sorry, is it the regular?
Tensor, right? Oh, the standard representation.
The standard representation. So that sort of calculation has never been done before? I mean.
Oh, no. That's an easy calculation. Yeah. Oh, for the trivial. The sign one, I haven't seen it, but again, I'm sure it's not that hard.
It has not been broken up into its parts? I'm sorry, I just very curious.
Sorry?
No, that standard representation has never been split up?
No, that should be all easy, yeah.
I see.
So what is interesting is for the irreducible representations of GLN, you get an alternating sum of what are called vector partition functions, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of single, so I'll just, so I guess people can leave since I'm going over time, but.
Or if there are other questions they could ask.
But I would just, maybe I can just mention something.
Yes, that would be nice.
So the thing is this, so suppose you take, there's a representation corresponding to the partition K comma L, you just take K greater than or equal to L. Okay. So this is a representation of GLN corresponding to K comma L.
Are you writing on the screen?
Oh, yeah, I need
to. You have to share.
Yeah, silly me. Yeah. So take k greater than or equal to L, then there's a representation like this. So it's it has a basis given by semi-standard Young tableau with two rows, the first row of size k and the second row of size L. And it turns out that this thing, the multiplicity of the trivial representation here is Pnkl minus Pn k plus 1 L minus 1, where P and KL is the number of ways of writing k comma L as k1 comma L1 plus k2 comma L2 plus dot dot dot, where these are say in decreasing graded lexicographic order. I mean, I just want to take this. I don't care about the order in which these are written. If I rearrange it, I'm concerned. And there should be exactly n parts. So this is a two-dimensional analog of the partition function. Is that clear what I'm talking about?
Yes, but what, sorry, I was not so clear.
So Pnkl is the number of ways of writing the vector kl as a sum of vectors k1, l1, k2, l2, kl, ln, kn, ln, where maybe I'll write it like this: 0 is less than or equal
Is it
to
a partition of ki is partition of k and li partition of L?
yes. No, yes, that is true, but it's not the same as they're not independent.
Okay, they're not.
I mean, it's not the product of the number of partitions.
Yeah.
And this order here is some linear order, maybe graded lexicographic order. So the number of such partitions. So if you had only one argument, then this would just be the partition function with n parts. So you get this minus this. In particular, you get a representation theoretic proof of the fact that this function is unimodal, in the sense that if you can draw this array P and KL. So you have K here and L here, and P and KL attains its maximum along this diagonal and then reduces as you go away from the diagonal. That's what this is saying. And this is a theorem of Kim and Han from some 90s sometime, and the 1997, and they call it a conjecture of Landman, Brown, and Portier. And if you do the other one, the signed moment, then you get another very interesting thing. You get QNKL minus Qn k plus 1 L minus 1. And where Qn is the number of such partitions where you require these vectors to be distinct. So instead of less than or equal to, you put strictly less. And so you get a unimodality result for that also, which I haven't really seen before. And there are other interesting things you get. So if you take while mod, these are called while modules. Take one where instead of two rows you have two columns, then you get some partition functions where your vectors are parts are supposed to be 0, 1 vectors. So you get a whole bunch of very interesting inequalities involving these kind of partition functions. And for example, it would be interesting if somebody could estimate how this difference grows when K and L grow. So that's, I think, a delicate analytic calculation, which I certainly cannot do. It's multivariable thing, that too. And of course, already bipartite partitions are more difficult than ordinary partitions because you don't have modularity, you don't have circle method. It's not something that people really deal with as well as they deal with a partition function.
That's interesting.
So I can tell you more about that later. Actually, that was why I wanted to give this talk here. And then anyway.
You said it. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks for the talk. If we have any more questions, we will take them or thank the speaker. Gaurav? Maybe, fine, let's thank the speaker first and then we will hang around and speak with him if you want to. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I moved to my mother's bedside
Okay, okay, sure.
in the beginning of the talk.
Okay, okay, sure.
So it's being recorded, I suppose.
Yeah,
You can stop the recording.
too slow and I didn't get to do many of the things which I wanted to.
I'll go up and stop the recording. But it was really nice talk. Thank you so much for this nice Blackboard talk.
Yeah, welcome. It went a bit too slow, perhaps, but also maybe.
Not as slow as I think it's perfect. I really liked it. So the last bit of questions, I had to go and feed my mom. So I skipped, but I'll watch it on video. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really curious how you deal with these bipartite partition functions and understand. It would be interesting to know how these things grow, when these differences.
Exactly. How did you, how did they, okay, that of course you can tell me later, that they actually landed up.
That's to Arvind.
Arvind, did he get something? Let's hope he did.
Sorry?
No, he must have got something. He stayed till the very
He
end.
came. So he's actually attended similar talk before where I didn't have the science stuff. But the science stuff was, I don't know why I didn't see it, notice it before. But that seems to give new results in.
So
I don't know that.
Why are you fixate? I mean, why only these two one-dimensional partitions? You have not yet explored the other higher level.
So it should be actually my student Sridhar. He has some for generating function results for any representation,
Okay.
but those are much harder to get any useful information out of. So we do have results like that, and he's really been getting a lot of these very interesting generating functions. Even for Kronecker coefficients, he's got generating functions. But the generating functions are kind of I don't know. We have not been able to extract, something that you can bite into from those generating functions. But there are all these product type, things, formulas. So you can get a generating function for the multiplicity of any irreducible representation of Sn in any irreducible representation of GLN. Over all representations of Sn and all representations of GLN. Massive generating function. And it looks complicated and ugly, but it's a generating function. So, I don't know. You guys like generating functions. So.
Yes, we would like to see them, of course.
Extract useful information about that is something which, so some of that will be in his thesis. Most of the information we've extracted from that has been known results, but with the science stuff, maybe something. These are the two extremes.
Is there some kind of a motivation? I mean, what made you consider these two functionals? There must be.
We were interested in knowing the dimension of the irreducible of this trivial representation in representation of GLN. I mean, the trivial representation Sn, or rather, you have a representation of GLN. You want to know the dimension of the subspace of vectors that are invariant under Sn, permutation invariant vectors, and that's a special case of an open problem in algebraic combinatorics, which is you take a representation of GLN and restrict it to Sn. How does it decompose into irreducible? So that's what we were interested in, and somehow we ended up looking at character polynomials. Okay,
Okay, that was great. We will have to maybe look at your papers and then get back to you. The
Yeah.
unimodality and all that, it was very interesting.
Yeah. So,
Keep us in mind. So next time you want to present something, we'd really be happy to get you again.
really, after this thing,
No,
Yeah, it was fine. It was great. It's slower. We're getting till now. We've had very fast talks. I would say so. I mean,
most
did you
speakers,
follow the calculation, the main calculation?
no, that was a little fast. But well, we can go through it.
that was very useful because we always want to see the technique so that
Yeah.
we go to your paper, maybe we'll get something more.
Yeah, yeah.
And then at some point, maybe 2 years later, it'll be good enough for us to use it in our own way.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to do, give the techniques. And in the paper, you'll see a lot of interesting product decomposition. Hopefully, you'll find them interesting.
I think Gaurav is himself working on stuff which is bordering on this A1, A2, A3 stuff, right, Gaurav?
Yeah, so let's see. I mean, today also seemed something somewhat familiar. I have to look into
See?
What is the meaning of A1, A2, A3?
No, like your X1s, sorry. X1, X2.
X3, yeah. So, I mean,
Oh, really? Those binomial basis, what I call them?
no, I mean, this frequency, I mean, basically you're using the frequency, right? Of the sort of partition, like 1 has got frequency A1 and 2 has got frequency A2. That was a somehow in a recent work, which is still being worked at with my collaborator. We found this frequency function to be very nice.
Uh-huh.
And there is a clutch of lots of very elementary theorems all over the place,
Uh-huh.
connected to those number theoretic, formulas, where you have a phi inside, so some kind of a number theoretic Dirichlet kind of product formulas related to partitions and partition type structure. So even for plane partitions and so on.
Oh, really? Wow, that would be nice. I would like to hear more about that.
Yeah. So it's very extremely elementary.
Great.
We have to write it up, but it connects up with a lot of elementary things. Somebody did it in 1940s. There's a guy called Gandhi who found some results. Ramanujan's tau function you can do that kind of stuff too.
Oh, wow. I love that kind of stuff. Yeah.
All related to this frequency business.
Do you use what are called, so here what I'm using implicitly are what are called Polya cycle index.
Yeah, I saw that Z alpha. That looked familiar too. I mean, it's been so long before I.
So that proof technique is basically, if you've seen Polya cycle index proofs, they all proceed like that. So for people to know that, this would have been
The cycle index business, right? I mean, this looked totally classical. It's so surprising that it's new. I mean,
I was sure that this thing would be known, but I don't know, maybe nobody has yet told me where it is.
no, but it's
And it was very short, right? The proof was just a one.
fantastic. Your talk was also really, really, really nice. Thank you very much. So, do you want to be a regular part of this seminar? We can include you in our list if you're interested.
I don't mind, but already like my son is like grumbling about where I am and I have to go do something with him.
Yeah, sure.
That kind of problem is there. But
No, we'll just notify you. You decide whether you want to come on.
Okay, good. If I have the option of not coming, then please do notify me.
Yeah. And consider whenever you feel like, you consider giving a talk to this audience. That's all.
Yeah, so we have a seminar, in fact, running too. So maybe Gaurav, I've already managed to twist Krishnan, sort of emotionally blackmail Krishnan.
Okay.
No. They know me. If it's a garbage talk also, they know, they ask for it, like, because, yeah. But Gaurav gives very good talks. So,
Garbage talk.
no. Gaurav gives very good talks, so you should arm twist him more gently and,
No, I think the thing is, my lack of familiarity with these kind of generating function techniques and estimates and sort of, analytic things with,
It looks like you're getting sucked into it though. So at some point it will take over.
I don't know. After seeing Krishnan during his PhD days, I'm not sure I want to get sucked into this. so depressed.
Really? It was that bad, is it?
Reading Ivich's book, and you were like always so gloomy about
That
it.
is Riemann zeta, na?
Yeah.
Partition. Partitions is what's that called? Garden and flowers and all. Those are the words that I used. Not for Riemann zeta.
Yeah, I guess the really good mathematicians work on the Riemann zeta function, and then lesser people work on the partition function.
Sure, thanks. I'm out of it now. I'm not so good anymore.
All right. So I think I should stop
Okay,
recording.
okay, fine, fine.
Okay, yeah,
Hey, you're recording.